It's my pleasure to call Leon Gunther to come speak to us today. Leon was raised in New York City. He attended the ultra-Orthodox yeshiva Rabbi Chaim Berlin in Brooklyn, New York. There he learned a number of very important life-impacting teachings of Judaism. To always question that God loves the ger, the stranger, that is also the non-Jew, that God commands us to care for the ger, that we should strive to apologize. Camp Eshel, a modern Orthodox ultra-Zionist camp a la Ramah, engendered him in an intense love for Israel and Zionism and prepared him to found our Makhelah in 1994 and be its director until his retirement this past year. Our obligation to love the stranger led him not only to care and love Israel, but also to strive and have understanding and caring for Palestinians. Being exposed to the Shoah as a young boy at the yeshiva, having two aunts and an uncle murdered by the Nazis, and visiting Auschwitz in 1994, contributed to Leon's dedication in producing and directing the Yom HaShoah services at Temple Emunah for many years, and have contributed to his pain, shock, and despair in seeing videos of starving Palestinians in Gaza. While a professor of physics at Tufts University for 48 years, he was faculty advisor to Tufts Hillel from 69 to 72, and had visiting professorships at Tel Aviv University and the Technion in Israel. Leon has 3 children from a previous marriage and a stepdaughter and son with Joel. Each of the 5 of his children has blessed him with 2 beautiful, wonderful grandchildren. Leon, bavakasha.
Todah. You can hear me okay. Thank you. The full title of my talk is There is a Time to Celebrate. There's a time to be in a state of alarm. There's a time to learn. There is more than one way to love. There is a time to open our hearts. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, congregation, my dear community. My title does not reveal explicitly the subject matter of my talk. However, if you've been following Emunah Still Talks, you've probably seen many of my postings that relate to the Israel-Palestine conflict, in which case you know much about my feelings and can guess correctly that I will be addressing the Israel-Palestine conflict. I plan to avoid addressing specific issues of contention. I don't want to deal with contentions. I'll just report what I've read. I will focus on the crisis in broad terms that are affecting Jews in Israel and the diaspora, and I will often express my opinion. I hope that you will feel that I have adhered to my goal. As I have mentioned in my bio, in my education at the ultra-Orthodox yeshiva Rabbi Chaim Berlin in Brooklyn, I learned a number of very important life-impacting teachings of Judaism. First teaching is always to question. Always to question. Our patriarch Avraham is my model. It is a Jewish tradition to question, to argue, to discuss everything controversial. And among all religions, I feel that our religion stands out in this respect. Isn't questioning at the heart of Talmudic study? I am very, very proud of this tradition. We are witnessing now an incredible state of trauma, a trauma for American Jews and obviously more so for Israeli Jews. The greatest trauma that Jews have experienced since the Shoah, I feel. This trauma was brought on by the incredibly cruel massacre by Hamas on October 7th, 2023, almost 2 years ago, that involved their slaughter of 1,200 innocent people, and sadly, many of them were sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. They dragged about 250 hostages back to Gaza, tortured some, many, probably all of them, starved them, murdered many of them. And I stand before you grieving deeply within, and I'm sure that most of you are grieving too. The state of Israel is facing its greatest challenge since its founding. The fabric of Israeli society seems to me to be shredding. The Jewish people are facing its greatest challenge by far since the Shoah. The effect on the American Jewish community has been devastating in many ways. Our community is severely polarized. We often avoid talking to each other about what is going on in Israel and Gaza and on the West Bank to avoid arguments. There is silence, relative silence in the halls of Emunah. Our Jewish leaders have been, for me, too silent about the conflict for a number of reasons that are understandable. On the other hand, Jewish lay people they crave help and support. For me personally, a very painful experience involves the organization called Facing History and Ourselves. My visit in 1994 to Poland and to Auschwitz in particular left me understandably in great distress for many, many years. My visit to Auschwitz was an impetus for my producing most of the Yom HaShoah services here at Emunah since 1994. The purpose of the organization Facing History and Ourselves is to teach young people to respond, how to respond to situations wherein you observe someone being discriminated against or threatened or confronted with bigotry. Their motto is that if you see injustice, and this is quote, do not be a bystander. Be an upstander. Do not be a bystander, be an upstander. I've heard that from them so many times. They often teach through historical examples. Now, recently, I said to myself, I wonder what's going on in Facing History Ourselves, given the conflict. So I looked up their website, and I was unbelievably shocked. I couldn't believe it. Very sad, because there was not any word on their site. Can't believe it. Any word on their site having to do with the conflict in Israel and Palestine. Zero. I called their number, Facing History, twice, leaving a message, asking them, please call me back and let me know what's going on at Facing History and Ourselves. What are you doing? What are you producing? What material are you producing to help young people deal with this conflict? No answer. No answer. I used to have an intimate relationship with Facing History and Ourselves for many years. I arranged for the work of Facing History to be the theme for two of our Yom HaShoah service programs at Emunah, inviting people, staff from there, to address us. And every time I hear, do not be a bystander, be an upstander. On and on. Videos, on and on, of all sorts. I feel that the conflict in Gaza and Israel and the West Bank is a current situation that needs to be studied carefully by Facing History. It provides a real case, current case, wherein their motto, not to be a bystander, but to be an upstander. This is a chance for them to apply what they're teaching. They're teaching all over the country, in England, and I don't know where else in the world. They're wonderful. They're headquarters in Brookline. There's an opportunity to teach, to study thoroughly, to understand all sides and opinions with openness, and if needed, to act by being a bystander, by being an upstander, not a bystander. Well, I told you I didn't receive any response from them. Zero. I emailed them after a week or so and finally received an email response that was, guess what, an automatic message. How do you do something like that? Here's what we're doing at Facing History and Ourselves. Nothing except for this, what would you call it? Say it, please. A form letter? A form letter, yes, they didn't have to do anything. Just put this on. Someone emailed them, blah, 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 blah. That's what I got. 0. Well, recently I read an article about Facing History Ourselves, claiming that a number of high-level people working there on the staff who prepares materials, you should take a visit to that place. It's fantastic. It's a treasure for the whole world. And high-level staff are resigning. They're resigning. Why? Because of this silence. What are they there for? To talk about examples of that they have occurred in history, or create examples. What would you do in this situation? 0, absolutely 0. Why do I spend so much time talking about this organization? Because it meant so much to me. Because it clearly reflects so much of what the state of American Jewry is today. They can't even talk about such things. It's so important. We're going nuts, a lot of people, and they don't talk about it. They do nothing. And I feel that if we don't recover very, very soon, we will lose a major fraction of our young Jews who do not accept the silence of the Jewish leaders. What do they care? If Jewish leaders don't say anything, they know what's going on, and they don't say anything. 0. There's only 3 websites. I searched websites around the area of temples. There's only 3 websites that I found. There may be more, I'm not saying, that have some information, concrete information. This is what's going on here. This is what you can do. Only 3 that I found. I'm not saying there aren't any more, but I looked at many. Nothing. Why? I understand why. Avoidance. You want to avoid dealing with this very, 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 very challenging, difficult situation. As I said, it's a trauma for everyone. At the level of our Jewish community, polarization involves specifics about the war and conflict. However, on a global level, we are witnessing a momentous episode in all of Jewish history. That's clear if you think about it. I feel it's a momentous episode for all Jews in the world. And if it is a momentous event, then I feel that we as American Jews are obligated, if we care about Judaism, not to merely sit back and observe, but to respond with action one way or another. Let us not be the adults who line the streets in the tale, the emperor's new clothes. Nothing. Guys naked, nothing. Is the momentous event good, or is it bad for the Jews? Well, since this is a matter of opinion, I will present to you 2 diametrically opposite points of view. Found them in a recording. This was recorded in September 1994. First person, Michael Oren. He's very famous. I know him so well from so many years. Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former member of the Knesset, and deputy minister for diplomacy, advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and historian with a specialty in military history, author of the book, The 6 Days of War, which I read and found extremely thorough and lacking any prejudices, as far as I, and I'm an expert, can determine. Here's what he said. Here's what he said in his interview. Quote, "We are not living during historic times. We are living during biblical times." And I think that is very accurate. Very, very accurate. We are dealing with a period in Jewish history that will be remembered by the Jewish people for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years. So he thinks this is very special. It's a Maccabean moment, a moment of coming into the land of Israel. That this is the greatest single military victory in modern history. It's the greatest victory. That's what he said. I'm just quoting him. During the interview that lasted about over an hour, and you could read it, I'll supply it to you, you can judge for yourselves. Michael Oren made absolutely no mention of the following descriptions of what's going on. The total destruction of Gaza, as if a multitude of atomic bombs had struck Gaza and flattened it out. You can see the photographs. You don't have to trust me. Don't ask me, what are your sources and all that stuff. Do it for yourself. You need to look up yourself and not challenge me from something. Do it yourselves and look at the sources. Flat. He made no mention of the extremely well-documented violence of settlers on the West Bank. It's been going on for years. The murder of Palestinians, the destruction of homes and villages one by one, often with the support of the IDF. There's no mention of public declarations of the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, that he is looking forward with joy to the eviction of all Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza with the goal of annexation and Jewish settlement. He says it. You can read it yourself. But he's one of the two that supports Netanyahu. So there are three there, Netanyahu, and then you have two others in the government. You can talk about the Knesset and all those, but these people are written and they have a lot of power. I agree with Michael Oren. This is a period, I believe, in Jewish history that will be remembered in one way or another by the Jewish people for hundreds and perhaps thousands of years, as he says. I have no doubt about that myself, but that's me. The second person interviewed was Yuval Harari. At his interview, here's how he was introduced. He is the best. The interviewer said, the best, or perhaps the second best known Israeli in the world. He is one of the foremost thinkers of our time. He is the author of the world-renowned book, Homo Sapiens, and many others, and has been writing now, lately, about the extreme impact of AI on society, which obviously has nothing to do with the conflict, but it's a very, very serious issue, what's going on, what's going to happen with artificial intelligence. He's talking a lot about that, and he speaks all over the world. Well, Harari was asked about the events from October 7th till now. Where does it fit? Is it a footnote or a chapter in the sweep of Jewish history? And here's what his response was, quote, I think it could be one of the biggest turning points in Jewish history, maybe the biggest since the fall of the temple in 70 CE, since the Roman conquest. Judaism has survived. It became the world champion in surviving catastrophes. We know that. All these empires gone, we're still here. But it never faced a catastrophe, he says, like we are dealing with right now, which is a spiritual catastrophe for Judaism itself. Because what is happening now, right now in Israel, could basically void 2,000 years of Jewish thinking and culture, he says. What we are facing is the potential of an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza, in the West Bank, resulting in the expulsion of 2 million people. The establishment of Greater Israel, the disintegration of Israeli democracy, and the creation of a new Israel that is based on an ideology of Jewish supremacy and on the worship of what were completely anti-Jewish values for the last two millennia. Well, I feel that what is happening, I'm going to the side now and continuing. I feel that what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank reminds me of the history of the United States. Like the United States, Israel is an amazing, amazing country in so many ways. I don't know where to begin. It has an economy that has been recently reported to have a GDP that exceeds that of France. Imagine that. Amazing place. We know that. The contributions to science, to medicine, to agriculture, to water desalination are phenomenal. It has grown to be a military superpower in the Middle East. Its development of military weapons has been such that many countries turn to Israel for weapons. And I suspect that the dependence, and I've seen it in the news, I suspect that the dependence of many countries on Israel's weapons is partially restraining their response to what is happening in Gaza. Don't mess around with Israel. You might not get your weapons. What is happening in Israel also reminds me of U.S. history. A mere few decades after its founding, the United States developed into an incredible country with a sizable economy, entered the Industrial Revolution. At the same time, they developed a concept of, and I was taught this in school, manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. Oh, simple scripture. Of course, as a kid, what did I know what that represented? It sounded really hallowed. Manifest destiny. A 19th century belief in the United States that American settlers, I'm actually quoting what I read, what I'm writing, is talking about it is what I read. It's not my word. That American settlers were destined to expand across the North American continent. And it was really justified for religious reasons. Violating a treaty with the Cherokee Nation, who had their, what do we call it? I can't remember. Area. What do we call it? An area for a reservation. We'll call it an Indian reservation. They had a huge area in Georgia. Georgia said, who cares? Well, who cares about you? They wanted to violate the treaty. Things went to the Supreme Court in the United States said, you can't do it. Well, they did it anyway. Did you ever hear such a thing like that these days? Absolutely. What is the Supreme Court? When I looked up the Supreme Court, I asked my friend Gemini, I said, does the Supreme Court have any ability to enforce its rulings? Of course, the answer is no. Does any court have automatic ability to enforce its rulings? No. Everything that's done here is by social contract. Social contract. We take for granted that if we're going to live together, then we have to follow certain things so see things function. For me, the social contract in this country is dying because we're learning what it means, that treasure of social contract. It's horrible. Anyway, so what happened is the United States Army forcibly rounded up and marched thousands of Cherokee, along with members of other tribes, to the newly established Indian Territory in what is now Oklahoma. The journey was devastating, with thousands of Native Americans dying from disease, starvation, and exposure. This tragic event became known as the Trail of Tears. Well, recently the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz announced a plan to establish what is referred to as a humanitarian city, into which he wants to forcibly move the entire population, 2 million people of the Gaza Strip, into this humanitarian city. Well, the planned forced transfer and encampment of 2 million Palestinians in Gaza reminds me of that tragic event known as the Trail of Tears. Well, more recently, now listen to this. More recently, Michael Oren was asked his opinion of this plan. Listen, question, was it a war crime? He said, I'm not a jurist, but I tell you that it does cohere with Donald Trump's vision of the future of Gaza. That's what he says. Simple as that. Well, remember, President Trump's idea is to have a Riviera in Gaza. I've seen videos, AI videos produced, so see how beautiful it's going to look of this Riviera. Question, also to Oren. According to you, they can move 2 million people to a camp from which they would not be allowed to leave. Would that be all right? He said, did I say they can? Did I say they can? I said they are. That's his answer. Well, for me, this statement reflects what Harari was saying, a worship of what were completely anti-Jewish values. Now, if Michael Oren's picture is correct, shouldn't we be celebrating? You would think if everyone agreed with him, we'd be going, wow, say, what is the greatest thing? I don't hear anything going on here, or any place in the country, any place. But if Yuval Harari is correct, shouldn't we be alarmed and respond in a drastic way? So in either case, shouldn't we be discussing with each other what is happening? Shouldn't we, as American Jews, speak up? Perhaps it is not our right to speak up because we don't live there. I've heard that from even liberal Israelis years ago. I used to hear that. Even though liberal, they said, it's not for you to talk because you don't live here. Well, I feel compelled now. Anyway, I feel compelled to talk about what's going on in the West Bank. Last Shabbat, Rabbi Lerner reported on the Palestinian activist Auda Hathalin, who was shot and killed by an Israeli soldier last week. His murderer was taken into custody, but eventually released. Okay. Well, you think that's unusual? Well, that's not unusual because it's been happening for years. For years. You know, I reported about these events last fall in 2022. This event is concurrent with the destruction of Palestinian villages, one by one, violence against Palestinians, murder of Palestinians, destruction of water wells, on and on. And sadly, this is something for me. While there's such violence and moves toward ethnic cleansing in the West Bank and annexation had taken place since well before October 7th. Well before October 7th. Drop this. I mean, I've told you what it's about. Anyway, the bottom line is, no word from the Israel population, and I think that is what do you call it? I say that it reflects an apathy and a complacency, and I feel it contributed to the possibility of Hamas carrying out what they did. But anyway, 2 minutes she gives me. Okay, it's very simple. I got 2 more minutes. You know, we read in the Torah from Dvarim that God loves the stranger in giving him food and raiment, and therefore love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Well, why read the Torah if the Torah doesn't affect how we live? So I suggest that I have only 2 minutes to go. So that in order for you to have any caring and love, you have to have first sympathy to know and care about it, feel something's going on. The next step is to have empathy, that you feel it within what's going on, and then maybe you can get to the state of love. So bottom line is, you have a decision to make. Everyone has a decision to make. You can accept what you're hearing. You don't want to accept whatever. But if you choose to say, you know what, I don't know much about the Palestinians. I only hear them roaming around. Oh, they're Hamasniks. Well, you know, when I went to Paris, this will be the last thing I want to say. When I went to Paris in 66, 67, you know how they treated me? Coldly. You know why? Because I was an American. Because the United States ended up killing hundreds of thousands of civilians. So I'm really horrible because I'm an American. I didn't do anything. Tell me do you know about the Palestinians? If you don't know what the Palestinians are, then read up about it and you decide whether you want to move on to care, to have some sympathy, possibly. So I urge you, I hope that you will forgive my sounding too much like a preacher. I am a preacher. May we succeed in learning how to be helpful to each other, to support each other. We need each other. Shabbat shalom. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon.